The days passed quickly inside the training base, though for Mara, each one felt like a battle of its own. From morning until night, the instructors pushed the recruits harder than she had ever imagined. Every day began with long runs under heavy packs, combat drills, and endless tactical exercises. Every night ended with bodies aching and minds drained. For most recruits, it was a challenge, but for Mara, it was a mountain. She had no claws to grip, no wings to glide, no armored scales to shield her from the blows of training. Her body ached constantly. Bruises covered her arms. Her legs trembled with exhaustion, and sometimes her lungs burned so much she thought she might faint. But she refused to let the others see her weakness. The laughter had not stopped. Whenever she lagged behind, the bird-like recruit swooped above her with sharp laughter. When she stumbled, the reptilian shook his head and muttered that humans were fragile. The insectoid clicked his mandibles with mocking pity every time she dropped her weapon. But something new was starting to happen. The instructors noticed her persistence. While others boasted of their strength, Mara said little but worked harder than anyone. She was not faster. She was not stronger. Yet when others collapsed in exhaustion, she kept going. When some gave up halfway, she crossed the finish line even if it took her twice as long. During one drill, the recruits were split into groups to climb a tall obstacle tower. The tower was built of metal beams, ropes, and shifting platforms. For creatures with claws, wings, or strong limbs, the climb was easy. For Mara, it was nearly impossible. The insectoid recruit raced to the top in minutes, claws gripping every beam with ease. The bird-like recruit flapped her wings and soared upward, landing gracefully on the top platform. The reptilian used his raw strength to haul himself up quickly. Mara was last, far behind. Her hands slipped on the metal beams. Her arms shook from the effort and her legs felt heavy as stone. The others laughed, watching her struggle. "Fall already, human," the reptilian called. "She cannot even climb a wall," the insectoid added with a hiss. But Mara ignored them. She focused only on the next grip, the next step. One pull, one climb, one breath at a time. She slipped often, nearly fell twice, but always caught herself. Her body screamed in pain, but her mind stayed sharp. When she finally reached the top, sweat pouring down her face, she stood straight and looked out at the training ground below. She was last. She was slower, but she had not failed. The instructor watching the drill gave a short nod. "You may not be fast," he said, "but you finish. That is what matters." For the first time, the laughter around her was quieter. Later that week, the recruits were placed in a tactics exercise. The arena had been transformed into a maze of walls, barriers, and open fields. The recruits were divided into two teams and given energy rifles that fired harmless stun bolts. Their task: defeat the opposing team by capturing their flag. Mara's team groaned when they saw she was on their side. "Why do we have to carry her weight?" the reptilian muttered. "She will only slow us down," the bird-like recruit added. "Let her hide while we do the work," the insectoid sneered. The match began and Mara did as they expected. She stayed low, quiet, moving carefully through the maze. But while the others rushed ahead, boasting of their strength and firing wildly, Mara studied the field. She watched where the enemies moved, noticed how they left gaps in their defense, and marked which paths were left unguarded. Her team charged headfirst into battle, but they were quickly ambushed. One by one, they were stunned by bolts of light, falling to the ground with groans of defeat. Soon Mara was the last one standing on her team. The opposing recruits laughed as they surrounded her. "It is over, human. Surrender." But Mara did not surrender. She kept her body low, slipped between barriers, and moved quickly through the maze. She did not try to fight them head-on. She knew she could not match their speed or strength. Instead, she used her small size to her advantage, darting through narrow spaces and drawing her enemies into chasing her. While they hunted her, she led them farther and farther from their own flag. She counted their movements, learned their patterns, and when they least expected it, she doubled back. Crawling under a platform, she reached the enemy flag and pulled it free just as the others realized where she had gone. The alarm sounded, signaling her victory. The stunned silence in the arena was louder than any laughter had ever been. The instructors announced her team as the winners. Her teammates, who had doubted her from the start, stared in shock. Even the bird-like recruit who had mocked her the most could only whisper, "Impossible." Mara stood with the flag in her hands, breathing hard but steady. She had not defeated the others with strength or claws or wings. She had used her mind, her patience, and her courage. For the first time, some recruits looked at her not with laughter, but with curiosity. That night in the quarters, the reptilian spoke first. "You tricked them," he said, almost accusing. Mara met his gaze calmly. "I planned. That is what soldiers must do." The bird-like recruit ruffled her feathers. "But you were alone. You still won." The insectoid clicked nervously. He said nothing, but his eyes no longer held the same sharp mockery. Mara did not smile, but inside she felt the smallest spark of victory. The galaxy thought humans were weak, but she had shown them that weakness in body did not mean weakness in spirit. The next few weeks brought more trials. Mara still struggled in strength tests. She was still slower, still the smallest. But in tactical drills, she began to stand out. She saw patterns others missed, planned traps others never thought of, and found solutions when the stronger recruits failed. The instructors began to pair her with different teams to see how she adapted. Each time, her calm leadership and clever thinking made her group perform better. She did not shout orders like some did. She spoke clearly, gave short instructions, and acted with confidence. At first, the others resisted. They did not like the idea of following a human. But when her plans brought them victory, their resistance softened. They still laughed at her weaknesses, but when a strategy was needed, they began to glance her way. Mara never forgot their earlier mockery, but she also did not hold it against them. She understood something they did not yet see. Fear made them laugh. Fear of the unknown, fear of the idea that a small, fragile being could stand among them. But fear would not last forever. One evening, as the recruits rested after another long day, the bird-like recruit approached Mara again. "You are different," she said slowly. "Not strong, not fast. But you see things others do not." Mara looked at her with calm eyes. "Humans have always survived that way. Not with claws, not with teeth, but with mind and heart." The bird-like recruit tilted her head. Perhaps you are not as useless as I thought." It was not respect yet, but it was no longer mockery, and in a galaxy where humans were laughed at, that small change was the first step toward something greater. Mara lay in her bunk that night. Her body sore, her mind tired, but her heart steady. The others still doubted her, but the laughter was no longer the loudest sound in the room. Now there was something else, curiosity, and maybe even a hint of respect. She closed her eyes, knowing tomorrow would bring new trials. She would still be the weakest, still be the smallest, but she also knew this. Every day she endured, every day she refused to break, she was changing their minds, and slowly the galaxy was beginning to see that a human could not be so easily dismissed. The training base never rested. Each week brought harder tests, and each test was designed to push the recruits closer to breaking. The instructor said only the strongest and the most clever would make it through. By now, many recruits had already quit or been sent home. Some could not take the pressure. Others failed in combat drills or collapsed during endurance trials. Mara was still there. She was still the smallest and the weakest. She still finished last in strength drills, but she had earned something the others could no longer deny. She never gave up, and she always found a way. It was because of this that when the next great challenge was announced, no one laughed. Not loudly, at least. The instructor, his stone-like body towering above them, addressed the group in the arena. "Recruits, you have trained in drills, in controlled battles, and in simulated tactics. Now it is time to face the real test. You will be sent to the surface of Vera 9. There you will complete a field mission together. Survive, adapt, and complete the task. Only then will you prove you are ready." A hush fell over the recruits. Everyone knew the name Vera 9. It was a jungle world covered in thick forests and endless swamps. But that was not what made it famous. The planet was home to a creature feared across the sector, a predator larger than tanks, faster than most ships at low flight, and known for tearing apart entire squads. The instructors never said its name. They didn't need to. Everyone already knew. The recruits were given little time to prepare. Soon they were loaded into transports and flown across the stars. Mara sat quietly in her seat, the hum of the engines filling the silence. Around her, the others whispered nervously. The bird-like recruit's feathers were puffed with unease. The reptilian's tail twitched. Even the insectoid clicked his mandibles in a restless rhythm. Mara did not speak. She felt fear, of course. How could she not? But fear was something she had learned to control. She reminded herself, stay calm, think, adapt. That was how humans had always survived. The transport landed with a heavy thud. The doors opened and the thick air of Vera 9 rushed inside. It was hot, damp, and heavy with the smell of plants and mud. The recruits stepped out into the dense jungle, their boots sinking into the wet ground.
Strange calls echoed from unseen creatures.
The trees above stretched so high they blocked most of the sunlight. The mission was simple in words, but not in truth. Travel 10 kilometers through the jungle, reach a beacon point, and activate it. The instructors would monitor from orbit, but they would not interfere. The recruits moved in groups, weapons ready, eyes scanning the shadows. Every sound made them twitch. Every movement in the undergrowth made them raise their rifles. Hours passed. The jungle was endless, the air thick and wet. Insects buzzed, vines clung to their armor, and strange animals moved in the distance. But the recruits pushed on. Then it happened. The ground shook. At first just a tremor, then again stronger. The sound of branches snapping echoed through the jungle. A low growl rolled through the air, deep and powerful, making the trees seem to tremble. The recruits froze. No one spoke. Everyone knew what it was. The predator. From the shadows it appeared. A massive beast taller than any creature Mara had ever seen. Its body was built of muscle and armor like hide. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, and its jaws were filled with teeth longer than a human arm. Claws dug into the ground with each step, leaving deep marks in the mud. The recruits panicked. The bird-like recruit shrieked, taking to the air. The reptilian roared and fired his weapon wildly. The insectoid scrambled backward, clicking in fear. Others scattered in every direction, firing bolts of energy that only seemed to anger the beast. The predator lunged, its massive body moving faster than seemed possible. A tree snapped as it crashed through, scattering recruits like leaves in a storm. Mara's heart pounded, but she did not run. She crouched low behind a fallen log, eyes fixed on the beast. While others fired blindly, she studied it. The way it moved. The way it paused before striking. The way its head tilted to track sound more than sight. She realized something. It was not hunting randomly. It had patterns. It was fast and strong, but it moved with purpose. And that meant it could be predicted. Mara! The bird-like recruit shouted from above. Run! But Mara shook her head. Running blindly would only get them killed. She stood and called out to the closest recruits, her voice steady. Listen to me.
Stop firing and spread out.
Do not bunch together. At first no one listened. They were too scared, too lost in panic. But when the predator nearly crushed the reptilian under its claws, Mara shouted again.
Left! Move left now!
The reptilian, desperate, obeyed. The beast slammed down where he had been, missing by inches. His eyes widened. He looked at Mara with shock. Mara's mind raced. She scanned the jungle, looking for anything that could help. Her eyes fell on a cluster of thick vines hanging from high branches. She pointed. There. Draw it this way. The recruits hesitated. She was human, the weakest of them all. But in that moment, her voice carried more weight than their fear. Slowly, they followed her instructions. Mara ran across the mud, weaving between trees, shouting orders as the predator charged after them. She led it toward the vines. When it lunged again, she shouted, Now! Fire at the vines! Bolts of energy cut through the air, snapping the thick cords. The heavy vines fell like nets, wrapping around the predator's massive body. The beast roared in fury, thrashing, breaking some but not all. It stumbled, slowed for the first time. The recruits stared in disbelief. They had not killed it, but they had stopped it. Keep moving, Mara shouted. Do not wait. Go to the beacon while it's trapped. The recruits obeyed, moving quickly past the tangled predator. Mara was the last to leave, her eyes meeting the creature's for a brief moment. Its glowing gaze locked onto hers, and instead of only rage, there was something else there, something like recognition. Then she turned and followed the others. Hours later, as the recruits reached the beacon point and activated it, the jungle behind them was silent. The predator had not followed, not yet. But the image of it struggling in the vines, its eyes locked on Mara, stayed in everyone's mind. The reptilian, still panting, approached her. You saved us, he admitted. His voice held no mockery now, only disbelief. The bird-like recruit landed beside him, feathers still ruffled. You saw what none of us did. You made it hesitate. Without you? She stopped, unwilling to finish. The insectoid clicked his mandibles, not in laughter this time, but in unease. How? How did a human see what we could not? Mara looked at them calmly. Because humans have always survived predators. Not with claws. Not with teeth. With eyes, with thought, with planning. That is our strength. The recruits fell silent. For the first time, they did not laugh at her words. But deep in the jungle, the predator was not finished. It had been trapped once, but not defeated. And something in its glowing eyes suggested it had not forgotten the small human who had dared to face it. The jungle of Vera 9 was alive with movement, though not all of it was visible. The predator had not left. It had retreated into the shadows, but its massive form moved silently, tracking the humans who had bested it once. It was curious now more than anything, drawn to the small human who had outsmarted a creature built to dominate entire planets. Mara and the recruits moved cautiously back toward their transport point. The mission was complete, yet the forest felt different. Every sound, branch cracking, leaves rustling, made them flinch. The air seemed thicker somehow, heavier with anticipation. Mara walked at the center, scanning the area constantly. She had survived the predator once, but she knew it was not a creature that forgot easily. It would follow, study, and test them again. And if they panicked, it would strike without mercy. The other recruits, once mocking her, now relied on her. The bird-like recruit flew above, keeping watch. The reptilian stayed near her side, tense and alert. Even the insectoid moved with careful steps, his mandibles clicking softly in nervous rhythm. Hours passed with no attack. The jungle seemed calm, but Mara never let her guard down. Her eyes moved constantly, her mind calculating possibilities. She thought about the predator, its size, its speed, its patterns. She realized that brute force alone could not defeat it. Only understanding could. And Mara understood. As night fell, the jungle became darker. Shadows stretched long, and the sounds of strange creatures filled the air. The recruits were preparing to rest briefly near a shallow stream when a low growl echoed through the trees. This time it was closer. The predator stepped into a clearing, its massive form illuminated by the pale light of Vera 9's twin moons. Its eyes glowed like molten amber, and the ground shook slightly with each step. The recruits froze. The bird-like recruit squeaked and flapped nervously. The reptilian raised his weapon. The insectoid clicked sharply. Every instinct screamed to attack, to flee, or to hide. Mara, however, did neither. She stepped forward, slowly, carefully. Her hands were empty, her body relaxed, but her mind alert. She spoke, her voice steady. Be calm. It does not want us yet. Watch, observe. Do not make sudden moves. The predator's gaze fixed on her. It lowered its massive head slightly, sniffing the air. Its muscles tensed, ready to strike, yet it did not. Mara did not take another step. She remained still, her eyes locked with its glowing amber eyes. The other recruits watched in stunned silence. They had seen predators before, but none like this. And none had ever been confronted like this, with no weapon, no threat, just presence. Mara took a slow breath. It is not a mindless killer, she whispered. It watches, it tests. Respect it and it may respect you. The predator growled softly, a sound that rumbled deep in the chest of every recruit. Yet it did not attack. It took a cautious step forward, then another, circling around Mara in careful arcs. The other recruits remained frozen, unable to look away. Mara kept her stance calm, her mind analyzing every movement. She noted how it avoided stepping on branches that could snap and alert her to its location. She noticed how it paused when she shifted her weight slightly. She realized it was not only powerful, it was intelligent. Slowly, she extended her hand, palm up, toward the predator. A gesture of peace and perhaps curiosity. The other recruits gasped. The predator stopped, lowering its massive head closer to her hand. Its breathing was deep, and its amber eyes studied her every move. A faint click echoed from its throat, almost like a question. Mara did not flinch. She whispered softly, "We are not your enemy, but we are not weak." The predator paused. Then, in a moment that made every recruit's heart stop, it lowered its head further, placing it close to Mara's outstretched hand. It was not submission out of fear, but recognition. Recognition that this human, small and fragile as she seemed, possessed something it respected. Intelligence, courage, calm strength. The jungle was silent except for the soft sounds of the predator's breathing. Slowly, Mara patted its massive head lightly. The beast did not move abruptly. Instead, it stayed, its glowing eyes never leaving hers. For the recruits, the sight was incredible. The same human they had mocked, laughed at, and doubted had not only faced the galaxy's most feared predator, but had earned its cautious trust. Over the next hours, Mara learned to communicate with the predator using gestures, tones, and subtle movements. She found that it would follow her commands not because it was tamed, but because it chose to. It recognized her authority through confidence and understanding. The bird-like recruit hovered nearby, amazed. It listens to her," she whispered. The reptilian stared in disbelief. "No, this is impossible." Even the insectoid, usually so quick to mock, stayed silent, his mandibles clicking softly as he observed. Mara spoke to the predator calmly, pointing to the path ahead. It followed her without hesitation, moving through the dense jungle with her guidance. Other predators or threats would have attacked them both, but this one seemed to acknowledge her leadership. At times, Mara would crouch to examine something on the ground, a pattern of tracks, a sound in the leaves, and the predator would wait patiently. Not as a beast following prey, but as an ally following a leader. She realized then something extraordinary. The galaxy's strongest, most feared creatures were not always ruled by strength alone. Sometimes they responded to clarity, courage, and intelligence. Sometimes even the most terrifying apex predator would obey a mind it respected. The next morning, the recruits moved toward their extraction point. Word of Mara's encounter had spread silently among the group. Those who had doubted her before now watched with cautious awe. When the predator moved through the jungle alongside them, it became clear to every recruit that Mara's leadership had changed everything. The same humans they had once considered weak had now commanded a creature that could have destroyed them all. They no longer laughed at her. They listened. They followed. At one point, the bird-like recruit approached her carefully. How did you know it would obey you?" she asked, feathers trembling slightly with awe. Mara shook her head gently. "I did not know, but I respected it. I treated it as a mind, not just a weapon. That is all it needed," the reptilian recruit added quietly. "It is, unlike anything I have ever seen. You are human, and yet we can lead," Mara finished for him. "Not because we are the strongest, but because we understand, because we adapt, because we do not give up." The insectoid clicked his mandibles softly, almost in agreement. "Perhaps we underestimated your species." Mara said nothing more. She did not need to. The predator's presence, calm and obedient to her commands, spoke louder than words. By the time they reached the extraction point, the jungle seemed smaller somehow, less threatening. The predator remained near Mara as if guarding her. When the transport arrived, it paused at the edge of the clearing, watching silently. Mara knelt and spoke softly to it. "We will return, together." The beast made a low rumble and retreated slowly into the forest, its massive form disappearing among the trees. The recruits boarded the transport in stunned silence. They had expected fear, danger, and chaos. Instead, they had witnessed something far stranger and far more impressive. Mara sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She did not boast. She did not need to. The galaxy had already begun to notice. Back at the training base, the news spread quickly. The instructors debriefed the group, acknowledging the extraordinary event. A human recruit had faced Vera 9's apex predator and survived. Not only that, but she had earned its cooperation. Whispers spread among the recruits, the human who could command a predator. Some were in disbelief, some were in awe, but none laughed anymore. Mara returned to her quarters that night, her body tired but her mind alert. She understood that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was full of challenges, more dangerous than even this predator. But now she had something more than courage or skill. She had proof. Humans were not weak. Humans could lead even the most terrifying of creatures, and the others who had once mocked her were finally beginning to see it. The days after the Vera 9 mission were unlike any Mara had experienced. Recruits and instructors alike whispered about the human who had faced the apex predator and lived. More than that, she had not only survived, she had commanded it. The story spread across the training base, carried in whispers, amazed glances, and quiet conversations in the mess hall. For the first time, Mara's presence was no longer met with laughter. The recruits who had mocked her, the reptilian, the bird-like, and the insectoid, now looked at her with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. They had seen what she could do, and they could not ignore it. Yet Mara did not change. She remained calm, focused, and disciplined. She did not boast of her encounter, though the predator's shadow was never far from her mind. She trained as she had always trained, with determination, patience, and intelligence. The instructors recognized her potential. In the following weeks, they assigned her to increasingly difficult missions, pairing her with teams that included the strongest recruits. Some expected her to fail. Others expected chaos, but Mara adapted as she always had. In a simulated assault exercise, the team faced a complex scenario: multiple enemy positions, advanced traps, and environmental hazards. The other recruits relied on brute force, charging forward with energy rifles blazing. Mara observed quietly, analyzing the terrain, the enemy patterns, and the weaknesses in the obstacles. She issued calm instructions. Move left. Use the cover by the rocks. Timing is critical. Wait for my signal. Her team followed, hesitating only briefly before trusting her guidance. Step by step, they navigated the hazards, avoided traps, and reached the objective with minimal injuries. The instructors were stunned. Not a single member of her team had been injured, and they had completed the mission faster than anyone expected. The others looked at her in disbelief. Even those who had once mocked her could not deny her skill. It was during another field exercise that Mara's greatest test came. The instructors sent her team to a rugged canyon world. The canyon was home to dangerous terrain, unpredictable weather, and creatures that could easily overwhelm inexperienced soldiers. The recruits were tense as they descended into the canyon. Rocks shifted underfoot. Gusts of wind threatened to throw them off balance, and the echoes of unknown predators filled the air. Many whispered that they should have sent someone stronger, faster, or bigger than a human. But Mara did not falter. She led the team carefully, finding paths others missed, spotting hazards before they became dangerous, and maintaining a calm rhythm that kept her group from panicking. Then, unexpectedly, a pack of predatory beasts, smaller than the apex predator of Vera 9 but still deadly, emerged from the shadows. The team froze, weapons raised, unsure how to act. Mara stepped forward, raising her hand slightly in a gesture the beast could recognize as non-threatening. The creatures hesitated, sniffing the air, unsure of her intentions. Mara spoke softly, using tones and gestures she had learned from her encounter with the apex predator. The beasts backed down slightly, their eyes following her movements. Slowly, they began to retreat, leaving the team unharmed. The other recruits were amazed. They had expected a fight, perhaps even casualties. Instead, the human had negotiated with the creatures without a single bolt fired. When the instructors debriefed the team afterward, they were astonished. "This is not about strength," one said quietly. "This is about leadership, strategy, and understanding. This recruit, this human, has qualities no one else has demonstrated." Back at the training base, Mara's influence grew. Other recruits began to seek her guidance, asking questions, observing how she approached challenges and learning from her strategies. She did not demand respect. She earned it through actions. Even the apex predator from Vera 9 seemed to recognize her leadership. Scouts from the base reported that it had returned to the jungle, yet it would follow Mara's team silently from a distance during certain exercises, always observing, never attacking, always ready to act if she commanded. The galaxy's most feared predator had submitted to a human, and that fact alone sent ripples through the ranks of the Unified Defense Force. As graduation approached, Mara's final test was announced. Recruits were sent to a simulation of a hostile planet under siege. The objective was to lead a combined team of species against a superior force of robotic enemies designed to overwhelm and destroy. The other recruits murmured, recalling the human who had once commanded the apex predator. Many were skeptical, but most were eager to see if she could do it again. Mara stepped forward, her posture calm, her eyes steady. She assessed the terrain, the strengths and weaknesses of her team, and the capabilities of the robotic enemy. She began issuing orders, precise and clear. Flank from the left. Cover each other's movement. Use the terrain to our advantage. Wait for the signal before striking. Her team obeyed. The insects with sharp mandibles scurried to higher positions. The bird-like recruits used their flight to scout, and the reptilians formed a solid front line. Every action coordinated, every move calculated. Mara's plan unfolded flawlessly. The robotic enemies were lured into traps, neutralized systematically, and finally driven back. Her team succeeded where others had failed, completing the mission with minimal losses. The instructors could not hide their astonishment. "Remarkable," one said. "The human is not only surviving, but she is leading with excellence." After the graduation ceremony, Mara stood on the podium. The recruits who had once laughed at her now stood in formation, facing her with respect. The instructors acknowledged her extraordinary achievements, and somewhere in the jungles of Vera 9, the apex predator watched from the shadows, a silent guardian waiting for her next command. Mara looked out over the gathered recruits. She did not boast, but her presence spoke louder than words. She had proven that humans were not weak, that strength was not measured only in muscles or claws, and that courage and intelligence could command even the galaxy's most feared creatures. The once mocked human had become a symbol that the galaxy could not ignore. In the following weeks, Mara led teams on increasingly challenging missions, each one cementing her reputation. The other recruits learned quickly. Strength alone was not enough. Strategy, adaptability, and calm leadership were just as vital. Mara had taught them that lesson through example. The bird-like recruit, once her harshest critic, flew beside her during one mission. "I understand now," she admitted softly. "Strength is important. But courage, wisdom, and calm, they matter more than I realized." The reptilian nodded in agreement. "Humans, we underestimated them. We were wrong." Even the insectoid, always skeptical, clicked his mandibles softly. "They are not fragile," he said. "They endure. They adapt. They survive." Mara said nothing. She only nodded, her calm presence a reminder that leadership was not about pride. It was about action, understanding, and respect. By the end of her training, Mara was no longer just a recruit. She was a leader. The apex predator that had once threatened her now followed her silently in the shadows during exercises, a living reminder of her courage and intelligence. The recruits who had once doubted her now relied on her guidance, learning from her example. The galaxy had laughed at humans for centuries, believing them weak and fragile. But Mara's journey proved otherwise. Humans could adapt, survive, and lead. They could face dangers far greater than their own size and still emerge victorious. And as Mara looked out at the horizon, she understood something deeper. Her journey was just beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of threats and challenges, but she knew one thing for certain. No matter how small or underestimated a human might appear, courage, intelligence, and perseverance could change everything. The once laughed-at human recruit had not only survived, she had reshaped the perception of humanity across the stars, and with the apex predator by her side, she was ready for whatever the galaxy could throw at her next. The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with voices. Dozens of species sat around the long circular table, their glowing eyes and strange bodies reflecting the soft blue light of the chamber. It was a place where the most powerful rulers in the galaxy came together to make decisions that shaped countless worlds. On this day, the subject was humanity. The elder Kuroth, one of the oldest members of the council, stood slowly from his seat. His body was tall and thin, his skin shining like silver. He was respected by many, for he had seen more wars than anyone else in the room. His voice carried weight, and when he spoke, the chamber grew quiet. "You all know why we are here," Kuroth began. "There is a new species spreading through the stars. They call themselves humans. At first glance, they look weak compared to us. Their ships are small, their numbers are few, and their worlds are young. But I have studied them. I have seen what they are capable of. And I tell you this, do not attack them." Some of the younger commanders in the chamber exchanged looks and even chuckled. Kuroth's eyes narrowed. "You think I exaggerate? I do not. Humans are different from other races. They will not kneel. They will not surrender. Even if you capture their cities, even if you destroy their fleets, they will keep fighting. And they will fight not just for themselves, but for each other. I have seen it in their history. I have seen it in their nature." A heavy silence followed, but only for a moment. Then laughter erupted. "Are we to fear a primitive race?" sneered General Vora of the Klin Dominion, her forearms folded across her chest. "We have crushed empires greater than theirs. What can they do against us?" "The humans are barely a century into space travel," said Lord Trask of the Zorians, his scaled face breaking into a smile. "They stumble like children, yet you speak of them as giants. You give them too much credit, Elder." Others nodded and murmured in agreement. The idea of fearing humans seemed absurd. But Kuroth remained calm. He leaned on his staff and said in a steady voice, "You mock me now. But I give you this warning. If you strike them, you will regret it. They will never surrender you. They will never stop until one side is broken. If you force them into war, you may win battles, but you will lose something far greater. You will lose your strength. You will lose your will." The council chamber erupted into arguments. Some species demanded swift conquest, believing humanity would make an easy target. Others dismissed the entire discussion, claiming humans were too unimportant to worry about. In the end, the council made their decision. They would prepare an attack. Humanity was too bold, they said. Humans had expanded into Mars, into the asteroid belt, and even begun sending expeditions toward the outer planets. Their presence, though small, was growing quickly. The council feared that if left unchecked, humanity might one day challenge their control of the galaxy. The vote was cast. War was decided. Kuroth sat back down, his heart heavy. He had seen the look in the humans' eyes during first contact. When the humans had arrived at the great trading hub of Vera Station, they had not behaved like frightened newcomers. They had not bowed nor begged for alliances. They had walked among the other species with a strange confidence, their eyes sharp, their voices steady. They had treated others as equals, even when mocked. That spirit, Kuroth knew, was not something that could be crushed easily. As the council chamber emptied, Kuroth whispered to himself, "They do not understand. They think strength is only measured in fleets and weapons, but humans have something more, and when they see it, it will be too late." Far away on Earth, humanity was unaware of the storm forming against them. The planet was alive with energy. Cities sparkled at night. Ships moved between Earth and Mars, and stations orbited the moon. Humanity had entered the stars, not as conquerors, but as explorers. Their technology was still young compared to the great empires of the galaxy, but their ambition was unmatched. On Mars, engineers worked tirelessly to expand the colonies. Domes stretched across the red deserts, glowing with light. Children played inside while workers mined deep into the crust, pulling resources needed for future ships. On Earth, scientists designed new engines to reach beyond Jupiter. Young cadets trained in orbital academies, dreaming of serving on ships that would one day cross the galaxy. Most humans believed the galaxy was vast and peaceful. They thought other species would welcome them with open arms. But whispers had begun to spread. Traders who had traveled farther than most spoke of unfriendly eyes watching humanity's rise. Some stories told of alien fleets gathering in secret. Still, humanity pressed forward, united by hope and determination. Back in the halls of the alien coalition, plans were being made. The first strike would be swift, they decided. A fleet of warships would move into the solar system under the cover of darkness, using advanced cloaking fields. Their target would be the colonies on Mars and the outer asteroid stations. If those fell quickly, Earth would be isolated and forced to surrender. The generals were certain it would be easy, but not everyone shared that certainty. Among the soldiers preparing for war was a young alien officer named Dren. He remembered Kuroth's warning. The words stayed in his mind. "They will never surrender you." At first, Dren did not understand, but the more he thought about it, the more uneasy he felt. Why would a wise elder warn so strongly about humans? What made them different from other species? Dren began studying human history in secret. What he found troubled him. He read of ancient wars on Earth where humans had fought against impossible odds, refusing to yield. He read of explorers who sailed into the unknown seas with nothing but courage and determination. He read of families who rebuilt their worlds after terrible disasters, never giving up. Dren realized something most of his commanders did not. Humans had always been this way. They were not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most advanced, but they had a willpower that could not be broken. The fleet was soon ready. Engines roared, and the great warships prepared to jump toward the solar system. The invasion of humanity was about to begin. Dren stood on the deck of his ship, staring out at the stars. He could not shake the elder's words. A deep feeling told him this war would not go as planned. And far away on Earth, humanity continued their work, unaware that their greatest test was about to begin. The warning had been given. The council had ignored it. The galaxy was about to learn the truth. Humans never surrender.